first time that course has been offered there. I'm very excited about that. So to get started, what I really want to talk today about is the students in the program. But in order to kind of set that up, I want to give you a little bit of background on the program. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how this program has managed to attract some really amazing students. There's certain variables about the program that really help us bring in some interesting and varied backgrounds of students. I also want to talk about how the structure of the program empowers students to take a lot of control over the way the program is run, and then some of the amazing things they've done as a result of that background and that empowerment. And then finally, we'll hear from some students that I asked to share their thoughts with you on the program directly, so you don't have to take my word for it. But I'll start off by just giving you all a little bit of background on the program. For those of you who don't know, the OMSCS stands for Online Masters of Science and Computer Science Program. It was started as a collaboration between the College of Computing, AT&T, and Udacity about 2 years ago now. Georgia Tech provides the professors, the teaching staff, the material, and the accreditation. Udacity develops our lecture material and videos, and also provides some support in running our courses. And AT&T provides a lot of funding to help us make sure we can deliver really high quality experiences. And the reason why these three organizations wanted to do this is they really wanted to look at generating a very high quality online master's program, and so that's what we've tried to put together. You can find more about the program at the website listed on the screen. But of course, online degrees aren't really anything new. Distance learning has been around for about 100 years probably. Online degrees have been around for probably since before 2005. We have organizations that really focus on doing online degrees like University of Phoenix. We have traditional universities that have branched out into online degrees, like Brenau University here in Georgia has a very big online set of online programs. And even some of the most prestigious universities in the country already have online master's degrees. Stanford has online masters. And this isn't even the first online master's that Georgia Tech has offered. Georgia Tech Professional Education offered online master's degrees before we ever got started with this. And so what makes this program different? Why am I talking about this program instead of all the other online master's degrees out there? One thing that doesn't make it different is the idea of it being MOOC-based. These really aren't MOOCs. They're not massive. They don't attract tens of thousands of people. They attract maybe 400 or 500 at the largest. And they're not open. You have to apply to the program, you have to be accepted into the program, and you complete the program just like you'd complete an on-campus program. Another way they're not massive is that with a MOOC, they're constructed such that no matter how many students are taking the course, you don't have to add teaching staff to it. You just run it, you put it out there, and it kind of runs itself. With this, as more students register for classes, we have to actually add more teaching staff because we have assessment, we have tutoring, we have things like that, we have office hours, more things that are more similar to an on-campus program. So it's not different in that it's MOOC-based. There are really three things that make this program different than other online master's programs. The first is that it's built from the ground up to be for the internet. A lot of online master's programs I've seen kind of record the in-person lecture experience, and they really focus on recreating the in-person experience in an online environment. But what this one really tries to do is take advantage of the unique opportunity of delivering this kind of program online. So we generate lecture material and generate some exercises that really only work online. They wouldn't work in person. We try and take advantage of what the internet lets us actually do. The second thing, and probably the biggest thing for many people, is the fact that it's very, very low cost. The tuition is $170 per credit hour. In terms of tuition, it's $5,100 for the entire program. With fees, it ends up being about $8,000, so I hope that starts to come down in the near future. I've looked far and wide. I can't find another master's degree that's anywhere in the same ballpark. Most of them are at least $20,000, if not $50,000 or $100,000. I found one school that offers one for around $10,000, and that's all I found. If anyone knows of any, please let me know, because I'd be interested in knowing the full landscape, but I haven't been able to find anything that competes with this in cost. And the third thing that's really kind of different about this is you might look at those first 2 points and say that the way we're going to do this is we're going to basically make an online master's degree that's an online master's degree. It kind of has an asterisk attached to it. No one's going to take it with the same level of seriousness that they take an in-person master's degree. But unlike many other programs, there is no online qualifier on the degree awarded to students in this program. It's the exact same master's degree that you get on campus. When you put it on your resume or when you submit your application, it comes up as a Master's of Science in Computer Science from Georgia Tech, the same as anybody else who got their degree on campus. And so it's really framed to be the equivalent to the in-person degree. Any of these three things would have been a pretty ambitious thing, in my opinion. To try and do all three at the same time was probably kind of insane, but it's worked. And so we're now in the the second full year, near the end of the second full year of it. Enrollment has grown semester over semester. We started off with a kind of beta cohort of around 400 students and have added about 1,000 per semester since then. This semester we have almost 3,000 students in the program, taking about 4,000 seats in the program. we have students from all over the world. There's still a pretty significant focus on the United States in the program, but we also have students from, I think, 89 different countries, I believe it was, all over the world, various different time zones, all over the place. This is actually a student-generated map of where our students are found, and it's available on the Google Plus page. It's just one of the many things that our students have actually put together to network with each other and understand the nature of the program that they're really helping us create. So some statistics from the fall semester. There's still some stats that we're really working on improving. 13% of the program is women, 16% are minorities, and 20% are international students, all of which are numbers that are far, far lower than we'd like for them to be. The good news is they've actually all gone up semester over semester, every semester since the program started. So they've all been increasing. And I think students have really started to take a really strong role in owning some of these things and addressing some of the misconceptions that have served as obstacles to some of the people we'd really like to get into the program. So some interesting things about the student profile. The online master students are very different than students we have in the on-campus program. For one, they're much older. Our on-campus students average about 23, 24, usually fresh out of undergrad. Our online students average in their mid-30s, and in fact, 90% of them are over the age of 25, whereas about 18% of our on-campus students are over the age of 25. They're more experienced. They have about twice as much programming experience as our on-campus students do. They're also almost all employed. Over 90% of our online students are actually employed full-time, so they're doing this kind of as a side thing. And we have statistics on this, but the vast majority of them also have families. They have husbands or wives and kids that they're taking care of, and so this is generally the number 3 thing on their priority list. They're also much more educated than our on-campus master students are. About 25% of them already have masters, and another 10%, at least in the class that I taught over the summer, already had PhDs, which is kind of terrifying when you're teaching a class where about 10% of the class is as educated as you are, and you're supposed to be telling them that you're the authority figure, which kind of goes out the window in this program. And interestingly enough, they're also more successful in these classes that we've seen. So in last fall, we ran an experiment comparing the on-campus master students to the online master students. They did all the same assessments, all the same assignments. They were graded by the same graders. Graders graded both groups blind. They had no idea who was online, who was in person. And we found that the online students actually outperformed the in-person students on about half the assignments and in the course as a whole. So there's a lot of differences between the on-campus and online master students. And it really kind of changes the way we have to approach certain elements of the program. So right now we have 5 of the on-campus specializations available in the program. And we're offering 18 classes this semester, with about another 25, total of 25 to be offered in spring. The vast majority of our classes are actually very project-based, which kind of goes against what I think many people think of when they think of online education. Many people think of little quizzes, little written assignments, maybe a final exam that's usually pretty auto-gradable. 14 of our 18 classes at least are heavily project-based, and the rest are based more on exams or small written assignments or things that are still a little bit more ambitious than what I think you usually see in online education. Very few of them rely heavily on multiple choice quizzes and things like that that are more easily graded, which is actually the reason why I mentioned we have to add staff as we have more students enroll. These projects are in some ways auto-gradable, but we really need a lot of people on hand to help us evaluate and give feedback to students on their work in their class, in their classes. I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools, but the main reason I'm talking about the tools is not just to list off the tools, but because the tools really serve a different function in the online program. Whereas in the in-person program, we have a lecture hall, which is really where the foundation of the course is. Online, the tools that students use are the class. They're the foundation that everything is built on. And we take away a really key component that we usually have on campus. So T-Square serves the same purpose it serves online. Udacity we refer to as the textbook. Some people are tempted to view it as the lecture hall, as the classroom, because it's where you actually hear from the professor. But really the function that it plays is it's more of a textbook. It's where you have the kind of the canonical knowledge that you need for the class. But you don't have any interaction there. You don't have any feedback there. The Piazza is really where we see the classroom recreated. Piazza is kind of the hub for all the classes. It's where students come for announcements, or it's where they come for discussion. Piazza obviously exists for in-person classes as well, but because it is the classroom online, it serves a pretty significantly different function, has a different significance for online students. I'll get to in a second. We recreate proctoring via a service called ProctorTrack that was actually started by a former Georgia Tech PhD that uses artificial intelligence and computer vision to detect anomalies in exams. We have a great peer feedback system developed by a former Georgia Tech master's student, Joe Gonzalez, that helps students give each other feedback on their assignments and things like that. That actually has ended up being one of the most significant parts of the program for a reason I'll get to in a bit. And we use WebEx for office hours, so students can actually have that one-on-one conversation with TAs and instructors, and that actually brings something to it that is often lacking in online programs. It kind of breaks that isolation, that lack of communication. There's a quote that I use, though, to describe the OMS program, and it's kind of going to structure the rest of my talk, and that's that the OMSCS program attracts amazing students, and then it empowers them to do amazing things. And there's three parts of this. There's attracting the amazing students in the first place. There's the structure of the program, which actually gives them the power to have some influence over the program. And there's the things that they do with that, the amazing things that come out of it. So I'm going to focus on these three things for the rest of my talk, starting with attracting amazing students. This really comes down to the traditional barriers that get in the way of getting a master's degree. There are a lot of things that would get in the way of a student getting a master's degree. One of them would be geography. They don't live near a prestigious university or university that has the programs that they want. And so we solve that by delivering our content online to anywhere in the world. And as a result, students are able to come to our master's program who wouldn't be able to uproot their family for 2 years and bring them to Atlanta and live here for 2 years and then move on, which applies to a lot of our students that have kids and spouses with their own jobs or their own jobs as well that couldn't uproot their lives like that. Time's another one, that if you have a full-time job and a family, you're not able to do a full-time master's program. And we structure our program from the very beginning around this kind of student body. There's no synchronous activities required. There's no, you must watch this lecture online at 9 a.m. because that's when I'm going to be there presenting it. And we really build it for full-time employees. One part of this is that we try and make all the material available for our classes on day one. So if you're working for AT&T and you know you have a business trip coming up in the middle of October, you can say, okay, I need to work ahead. I need to be ahead of all the work in my class because I'm not going to have any time to work right then. Or if you have a family vacation planned, you can actually work ahead and still succeed in the class even though you aren't able to develop or devote that kind of full-time availability. And that helps us really reach students that are unable to take 2 years off of work, which represent a major opportunity cost. Another major one is exclusivity. With a very prestigious on-campus program, we tend to have a certain number of students that we can take, and we take the best of all the applicants to fill up those slots. And as a result, there are students who wouldn't necessarily be competitive with our best applicants, but who nonetheless could succeed, but they come from different backgrounds. They don't have a background in computer science. And so when we look at them for a computer science master's program, we say, are they really going to stand the same chance of success here? And but for our program, the program is so large that we can actually take those students who don't have a background in this, but who we believe are willing to put in the work and actually still succeed. And that helps us reach people from non-traditional backgrounds, which is going to have kind of a nice feedback effect that I'll get to in a second. But all those things kind of apply to any other online master's program as well, that other online master's programs are very large, they're structured in more flexible ways, and they deliver the material online. What really separates ours is the cost. It's under $8,000 for the entire degree. If you take one class per semester, it's even less if you double up during that time. And what that lets us do is it lets us reach students who are interested in more than just career investment. With a traditional master's degree, you're taking a couple years off work, which in salary represents a pretty significant cost, and then you're also paying tuition. You're paying $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 for this master's degree. You can't do that unless you believe it's going to pay for itself, unless you believe it's going to get you a bump in your salary that's going to pay for itself over the next 5 or 10 years. But with our program, at $8,000 for the entire degree, it takes about 40 months if you take one class per semester like we recommend. That works out to about $200 per month. That's a car payment. It's a power bill in Atlanta during the summer. So it's really actually an affordable expense. It's not something that you have to do only if you believe it's going to pay for itself. And as a result, it lets us attract people who are mostly interested in this because they want to learn. And in fact, we survey our students and ask, why are you in the OMS program at the beginning of a couple of our classes? And the number one answer we always get is, I'm in this program just because I want to learn. We see career improvement as maybe the 5th or 6th most common reason, but it's usually, I want to learn, I'm interested in this subject, I'm interested in this class, I've heard from this professor and it seems like he has some really interesting things to say and I'd like to participate more closely with him. We see things that are kind of more authentic engagement, authentic interest in what we're actually doing. And that leads to some really interesting dynamics in the classroom. So we attract a variety of students into this program based on their interests, their motivations, and their backgrounds. And that then is going to enable them to kind of bring a unique perspective to our courses, but I'll get to what they bring in a second. As a result of this kind of flexibility, we attract students from a pretty wide variety of occupations, and this is just a list I went through of people I could remember having seen in the program from different backgrounds. About 80% of our students are still software developers, but in a program of 3,000 people, that still leaves 600 people who come from varied backgrounds. We've seen physicians, we've seen executives, we've had college professors in some of our classes, which again is terrifying if you're supposed to be the authority, and now you have someone who is pretty directly outranking you in your class as a student. We see people from a pretty varied number of occupations. And what's really cool about this is that many of our classes are actually built around some of these things. Mark teaches health informatics and has had, as far as I know, physicians as students in the class. And that they bring a perspective to it. They can tell the software developers in the class about what it's like to use these things out in the real world. I'm teaching educational technology this semester, and I have several students who have been or currently are K-12 teachers, and they can tell you what it's like to actually be a teacher out in the real world. A couple of my TAs are actually people who work in academia as well, and they can actually bring a really authentic perspective about that tool that you're talking about doing. It's not going to work in the real world for these reasons that you wouldn't really have if you didn't have people with those backgrounds in the class. One of my favorite ones is in knowledge-based AI. We use IBM's Watson as kind of a running example of AI in the real world. And in fall, we were running our introductions thread and saying, hey, introduce yourself, tell us what you do. And one student's response was, I work at IBM working on Watson. And our thought was, okay, you're teaching the rest of the class, we'll be over here just twiddling our thumbs because you know far more about this than we're ever gonna know. And so there's really some unique opportunities from people who come from these different backgrounds. And the same thing applies to employers as well. We have students from a variety of different, very well-known employers. AT&T sponsored a lot of our initial students, but we have employees from Google, Apple, Microsoft. We have students in the military. We have students from financial institutions, from universities. And they bring some really unique perspectives as well. And what's particularly fun for me is that we've had instances where a student will say, what I learned in this class, I turned around and applied the next day. It's not, I'm learning this because I might need it 2 years from now or 5 years from now, or maybe one day I'll get a career in this. It's, I learned something on Sunday night, and on Monday morning I got to apply it. We've actually had a couple very fun instances where companies, like people who aren't affiliated with the program, but people who work for the companies that have students in our program, have reached out and thanked us and said, what you taught this student in this class actually impacted a project that we have going on at work right away. And that's just kind of a authentic kind of level of engagement and authentic application of the skills that goes past anything I've ever seen in higher education. I asked a few students for permission to brag on them more specifically. And so to give you an idea of some of the students we have in our program, we have a guy named Paul York, who's an assistant professor over at Regents University. One of my TAs for educational technology this semester is Ken Brooks, who's the chief operating officer of Macmillan Publishing. And he's a TA giving students feedback on their ideas for what to do in educational technology while he's working in the area. Wade Ashby is the director of online technologies at a college in Texas. Nick Alano is an engineer at SpaceX, can actually talk about how some of the principles we use in the program apply directly to his work the next day. Greg Weber is one of the TAs for EdTech as well, and he works in the Microsoft Learning Group. He works on the group specializing in helping K-12 students know more about computing, and he's now in EdTech giving students feedback on their ideas. Nate Payne is probably a name that is familiar to many people in this room because he runs many of our social networks as a student as well, and works in data science and education. And Bobby Eicher recently was featured in the US News and World Report, who is a research intern over in Switzerland while completing in this program. And these are the kind of people that we have in the program working with the other students. And interestingly enough, this is actually one of the things that some people would criticize about this program. They would point to people like this and basically say, are those really the people we care about reaching? Like, it's great for them, don't get us wrong. We love that Ken's able to do this, but shouldn't we be reaching the people who wouldn't be able to achieve this kind of education, who aren't already successful? And there's a very strong argument for that, and that's very true, and I think we have a lot of those in the program. But what I'm most interested in is that these students don't exist in a vacuum. They aren't just isolated in their office, only interacting with the teaching team. They're interacting with each other. And so the students in the class actually get to interact with people like this, that if I'm working on an educational technology project, I'm going to get feedback from people who really work in the area, which is really going to help me develop my ideas in a way that connects to the real world. And that kind of connects to the next point, which is not only the students we attract are fantastic, but the nature of the program actually empowers them to do some pretty incredible things. So I'm going to focus on what I call a 24-hour classroom. And the 24-hour classroom is the idea that when the classroom is actually based on a forum, students can have a lot of leeway in running the class. In an in-person class, you have a pretty finite resource of time. The class is going to meet for 3 hours a week. The professor is usually going to have a pretty tight agenda for what you're going to talk about during that time. And students have relatively little, in my experience at least, control over what you actually do, unless the entire class is structured to give students that kind of feedback from the very beginning. And even then, you still have a pretty limited amount of time that students are meeting together during the week. Online, we don't have that. Online, the forum is available all the time, and anyone can log in at any time and put in their 2 cents. And what we actually see is that students do exactly that they'll log in at 10 p.m. on a Saturday, and they'll start interacting with other students on the forum then. And their posts are there live for anyone else to see when they come along. And this leads to a lot of real neat opportunities for students to kind of take control of the class. One is with student-initiated discussions, that in my experience at least, if you're in an on-campus class and you want to discuss something, it's a little difficult to raise your hand and say, hey, Professor Neustetter, I have an idea I'd like to discuss. I know you have something we're going to do today. I think what I want to discuss is more important. So unless Wendy, which she does, structures the class to leave those opportunities, it's difficult for students to have that kind of control. But online, in this kind of classroom, they're not fighting with the professor for attention. The professor can still lead all their discussions, and they can add something on additionally. And in educational technology this semester, we've actually seen 200 student-proposed discussions that have nothing to do with us. They're not things we asked for. They're putting out articles, they're putting out questions, they're putting out thoughts that they had, and they're discussing them amongst themselves, and they're not competing with us for this really finite time resource. We also see some nice parallel discussions that on campus, everyone kind of has to, if you're in a room together, discuss the same thing at the same time. Whereas online, we have this nice dynamic of over here, we have some people who are really interested in discussing human cognition and human intelligence in KBAI. I'm sorry, that's one of the classes that we teach. And this other discussion, we have people who are having trouble with their code. And they don't have to listen to each other. They don't have to sit there listening to this code-based discussion while they want to discuss intelligence. They can direct their attention. They can individualize their experience based on what they're interested in the class, because there's not this kind of in the same room at the same time, all having discussed the same thing dynamic. The other nice thing is that they're self-documenting, that the discussions that they have, they're there for the remainder of the class. So in knowledge-based AI, one thing we do is, first week of class, we ask students to define what is intelligence. And then the last week of class, we say, go back and look at what you said the first week of class. It's there, it's right there, I'll link you to it. And tell us how your idea has changed. How has your notion of intelligence changed? And we can actually have that discussion in a way that builds on what they see right there. And we also see a lot of students helping other students, which really helps the community. The student will ask a question, and long before we can ever get to the question, another student has jumped in and helped them out. It's not raising your hand in the lecture and saying, Professor Erickson, what is the answer to this question? It's, I'm just putting this out there. If Professor Erickson gets to it first, then great. If another student gets to it first, that's great as well. And then the instructors can come along and just mark, yes, the answer you got was already great, and I don't need to say anything more about it, which really helps students kind of build this community around this class, because they're not just directing everything to us. And that's led to something really interesting that I describe as de facto TAs. And for the students who are watching this online or will watch this recorded, you'll probably think of a name when I say this. We have certain students in the class that if you were an outsider of the class and you were just log onto the class forum and look at the interactions, you'd think that they were a TA, because they're helping everybody. They're posting deadlines, they're posting reminders, they're trying to help the class move along well. But they're not TAs, they're just students in the class who really take it upon themselves to want to help everybody out. It's a product, I think, of what we have with these large class sizes, that when you have 200, 300, 400 people in the class, you're gonna get someone that's really, really incredible just by the normal distribution. You're gonna get someone who's really engaged, really passionate, and really wants to help. And that one person, because of the nature of these forums, can have a really significant impact on the entire class. They can have an impact that goes beyond the 0.25% of the class that they make up. And so we see those students who, class after class, will really help their students. I've seen interesting conversations from students basically saying, oh, you took that class with him? You're so lucky. I'm sure he made the class experience so much better. I took it without him, and it was a little bit rougher. So. I see a lot of student self-organization as well around special interests or things like that. In educational technology, for example, students completely spontaneously organize discussion groups around special education or games in education. And that's something that they can do in this interface without any intervention from us. We don't need to facilitate that kind of thing. We also have group formation that we've been trying to figure out. How do you arrange group projects in an online class? How do you help students find each other? And one thing we've started to notice is, given the medium, they'll find each other. They'll interact, they'll post what they're interested in, they'll find what people are interested in the same things that they want, or what people can provide them with the skills that they need. As in educational technology this semester, we have about 15 projects that are actually group projects. In that class, you don't have to work in a group on your project, you can do it individually. But we have students finding each other and finding people that, I have great ideas about education, but I'm not a strong coder. You're good at coding, let's partner up, let's do that. So we see students doing a lot of that self-organization. And then one of the really nice things to me, and the really terrifying things to others, is that you get a lot of really strong feedback from students. When they don't like something, they will tell you. Part of that is the nature of the medium, that it's not I'm raising my hand in the middle class and in front of the 100 people around me, hey professor, I'm going to criticize you. It's, I'm going to post something right here that's obviously directed to you. Everyone else can see it, sure, but it's really directed at you. And part of it is also the nature of the students, that on campus we usually have students that are fresh out of their undergrad and are a little bit less likely to challenge the professor, in my experience. Online, you have students who, where they are, they're in charge of their own team of tens or hundreds of people, and if they think the professor is full of it, why wouldn't they say so? They're as accomplished in their area as the professor is in this one, and they'll call them on that, which can be really intimidating if you're not prepared for that, but can also be really liberating to know that when you're not doing something well, someone's going to give you feedback on it, and you're going to be able to actually improve it right there in real time. Students will tell you, hey, in this class, this isn't going very well. Here's how I think we should improve it. You can actually incorporate it right there live, which is intimidating the first time it happens, but you get used to it. And the number one thing, though, that is the reason why I still work on this program is that the student-instructor interaction can be incredible. And that's not something I think we would have anticipated when we started this off. But what we find is that because this forum is always available and because students can really drive what they want to do, we can just pop in, and in 10 minutes late on a Saturday night, I can find a few discussions and post my thoughts real quick to a few different students. And it's kind of personal, it's intimate. I'm responding directly to Lauren about her thoughts on Common Core and saying, hey, here's my thought on that. But that's then going to be visible to the other 100 students or other 400 students in the class. So it's intimate because it's back and forth, but it's also visible and impacts everybody. And because students are the ones promoting this, we don't have to devote a lot of time to, today I'm going to do a discussion on this, tomorrow I'll do one on this. I can just kind of log in and say, here are my thoughts on these different things, and y'all are doing a great job developing this community, and let me just inject some feedback into it. And as a result, they interact with each other more, and we actually, in my experience, end up interacting with them a lot more. I know these students a lot better than I would know any on-campus student because I log in and I see 200 things Bobby has posted over the past 2 weeks, or I see 100 things Nate has posted over the past 2 weeks. And I can actually get to know them a little bit because it's not this, us getting to know each other is live in a classroom. It's asynchronous, it's self-documenting. I can go back and read over it. If I'm gone for a week, I'm not missing out on anything because I can log in and find out what happened while I was a little bit more busy. And so it's really led to a level of interaction between students and instructors that surpasses anything I've experienced. A couple of our other professors have said the same kind of thing, that they got to know their online students better than they get to know their in-person students because it's so available. I think all this kind of came to a culmination earlier in educational technology this semester, where in the first week of class, a K-12 teacher in the class posted a discussion of Common Core and basically her experiences with Common Core and what she thought about it. And it led to a discussion where we got 40 different perspectives on Common Core from different people over the course of a couple weeks. And we heard from a wide variety of different students. We heard from teachers, we heard from parents whose kids had gone through it. We heard from people on the administrative side who have dealt with kind of the politics behind it. And we were able to have an incredible discussion about that based on the different perspectives and based on the fact that they didn't have to compete for attention. It's not, I'm talking so Sriya can't talk right now. It's, I'm posting something right now and you can do it and then we can catch up on what one another did. So it's really created an experience that I never would have anticipated on it. And it actually goes kind of in the face of what a lot of people I've seen say about online education, that it's isolated, it's not interactive. It actually can be, when run correctly, it can be even more interactive. And so that's really empowered students to do what I would describe as some pretty amazing things. I'm going to go over a few of the things that they've done so far in this program. One is that students run most of our social media accounts. So we have a Twitter account that's official for us, but for our Google Plus account, it's completely student run. Nate Payne, who I mentioned earlier, kind of runs most of our student social networking initiatives, runs the Google Plus community with a team of moderators, and it has almost everybody in the program in terms of numbers. We don't actually know who in the program is actually in the community. But it's so popular and so active that oftentimes we'll actually answer questions there because it is the best place to reach students and find student questions. There are various other communities that students have started and run around HipChat and around Slack. Pretty active Reddit community for those who want to post a little bit more anonymously, which they do take advantage of. And we have a lot of Google Plus groups that have spawned kind of around special interests or around people in certain geographical areas and helping students connect with each other without actually any intervention from us. That's kind of an ownership that students have taken over making sure that the community of students is powerful in and of itself. I think students really, they understand that the reputation of this program is going to be staked more than anything on what students do after they get out of this program and the connections they make and what they kind of do in the real world. And they're taking ownership over that. They're basically saying, we're going to make this program really prestigious because we're the ones who define how good it is. Earlier in this year, we had students for the first time publish work based on what they did in this class, which I guess I say first time, it's a year old. It hadn't exactly been a long time coming. But we had 4 students from Knowledge-Based AI publish a paper at the Conference on Computational Creativity on their class project. They didn't go very far beyond what they actually just did for class. It's just what they did for class was unique and interesting enough that it was publishable. And Darren Bedwell, one of the students on that team, actually got to go to Provo, Utah and present the work himself. One of the most interesting things to me, though, is that we now have OMS students actually TAing some of our classes, which when we started this off was not something we really anticipated happening. Our OMS students are all full-time employees, many of them have families. We don't pay them what their regular job pays them. And so there would be a question of why would they TA our classes? They don't need the money, they don't have the time, why would they do it? We can't depend on them to do it. And then we started kind of looking at it. And for summer, when I was teaching knowledge-based AI, all our TAs from spring were going to be off on internships. So I basically said, hey, former students in the class, who's interested in being a TA? And I got 56 people interested in TAing the class for the summer. Overnight, we went from, I have to go around finding people who would be willing to TA the class to, I have to turn away 80% of the people who want to do it. And that's a really interesting dynamic. It's not something I've ever seen with TAs before. It's not this, we have to require it to get people to actually do it. It's, there are people interested in doing it. And what's interesting is we've asked them what their motivations are, because obviously they don't need the money, they don't have the time. Why are they doing it? And we've asked them. Many of them say they want to learn more about the subject, that they understand that by teaching it, they'll learn more than they would just by being in the class. Many of them want to help improve the program and help improve the class. And many of them want to network and collaborate with Georgia Tech professors and instructors. And as a result, they have a bit more ownership over it. They really take it upon themselves to make the class run very well. They have a great understanding of what it's like to be a student in the program. They know what it's like to be in a home office in St. Louis and not be near your other students. And they know what another student did that connected with them, that made them feel like a part of the class. And they're willing to bring that perspective and bring that experience to their job as TAing. And even more so, they have this incredible professional experience as well that they bring to it. It's, like I mentioned before, Greg Weber is a TA for EdTech. He works for Microsoft Learning. He has real world experience in this subject, and he can give students feedback and direction that you wouldn't have just being in a class the previous semester. So that's been one of the most inspiring things for me. Students have also developed some incredible tools for the program that I'll go through. Just a couple of them real quick. They've taken it upon themselves to develop a really comprehensive system for reviewing courses and sharing their perspective on courses with other students. And generate 500 student reviews that has been useful not only for students to figure out what they should take and what the time commitments are, but also for us to figure out what student priorities are, what impacts the student's impression of it. It's where we really started to notice that the videos that we produce are actually relatively a small portion of the real student experience. They have to be good for students to have a good experience, but they don't make a good experience. You can have a fantastic video library for your course and still have a very poorly reviewed course based on the way you do things during the semester. We have students gathering all the publicly available materials into kind of a repository for students to get views on other classes. One woman in the program, Angela Smiley, is working on an automated advisor to give students scheduling advice on what they should take and when based on their own qualifications and their course load. Jacob Langston is working on a system for automatically evaluating, unless I should say that I have all these students' permission to mention their work, is working on a system for automatically evaluating essays in knowledge-based AI so students can get immediate feedback on it. We have two students working on the issue of plagiarism. With a program this size, you're going to have those rare students that are going to copy work and working on systems for detecting that. We have a woman named Christine Hall who now works for Udacity as well, trying to recreate some of the functions that a library plays on campus. And we have a guy named Osmond Den who's working on discerning individual contributions to group projects, which is a really important thing when we're dealing with all these group projects, especially online, where our avenues to see what students are working on and how they're collaborating are actually rather narrow. We can't know who's coming to class and things like that. We just have to go with whatever they report. So really building some pretty fantastic tools that are going to help the program going forward. And then the culmination of all this is the class that I'm teaching this semester, CS6460 Educational Technology, which is a class that a year ago I would not have thought was possible, because there's not really a time when you stand in front of an audience and talk about a subject for 45 minutes, the way we have with the other classes that we pre-record. It's built around student participation. It's built around getting a lot of feedback. And we've built the online class around the goal of making an authentic contribution to the educational technology community. And we have students working on some fantastic projects there that really blow me away as to what they're able to do as current master's students. And I have their permission to share some of those as well. We have students working on what predicts whether a student will stay in the program, so we can intervene sooner if we believe that they're at risk of dropping out or not succeeding. Similarly, we're looking at what, the students are looking at what predicts student success. How will we know early on whether a student is actually going to be successful in the program? And can we intervene and raise their likelihood of success? We have students looking at how peer review actually impacts student success in the program. And we have a student looking at stealth assessment. How do you assess students when they don't even know they're being assessed? So you don't have this high stakes testing at the end to kind of pass students. You know by the virtue of the fact that they completed a course, they know some material. On the design side, we have students designing some fantastic tools as well. I have one guy named Chris Jones who's designing a tool for developing social skills in autism spectrum disorder individuals. We have Karl Heller who's working on simulations to train students in the workplace. A guy named Enrique Gonzalez who's working on teaching elementary school students to code via games. And one of the projects I'm most excited to use myself, David Wilson's project, which is finding level appropriate reading material. If you have a student in 3rd grade who wants to learn more about the rainforest, how do you find something for them that is actually at their level of reading? And he's working on a tool to help parents and teachers surface material that will let them teach whatever topic they want to students at their own reading level. And so this class has really been, for me, the culmination of what students bring to this program. It's built on what they bring. It only works because they're so willing to participate. They're so willing to take ownership over the way a class goes. So I've talked a lot about what students bring, in my opinion, but it would be a little bit disingenuous for me to just stand here and tell you all about them without giving them the chance to share their own perspectives on the program. So I asked some of our students to give me some video clips, just sharing what they think about the program, what they like. I actually didn't give them much structure as to what to say. They knew what it was for, so they probably knew they should be positive. But other than that, I really didn't ask them, give them any insight as to what to say. So I will let you hear from them. It's about an 8-minute video, and I'll take questions afterwards.
There are a few things that surprised me about the Georgia Tech Online Master of Science in Computer Science program. The level of dedication by everyone, the professors, the dean's office, the staff, the students, all focused on the same mission, to help you succeed as a student. Mission accomplished. And it's fast-paced and fun. It's like traveling at intellectual terminal velocity.
My name is Angela Smiley, and this is my 3rd term in OMSCS. Coming into the program, if you'd asked me, what is it you expect to get out of this? I would have said, well, I'll have a lot of fun with classes and I'll brush up on some skills I haven't used in a while. What shocked me in this first year is that, at least right now with a bunch of early adopters, the community of OMSCS is much more significant than the degree. I feel a lot closer to my colleagues here than I did to most of the people I studied with in undergrad, which is not something I could have predicted coming in. And there's much richer support for my creative interests in software outside the bounds of the coursework. Well, both inside and outside the bounds of the coursework, of an intensity that I just couldn't have envisioned prior to experiencing it.
My name is Karl Heller. I am one of the students enrolled in the OMSCS program. I'm currently taking 6460 Educational Technology run by Dr. David Joyner. I wanted to take a break from my day to talk about why I love the OMSCS program. 14 years ago, when my daughter was about to be born, my wife and I decided that we wanted one parent to be at home with our kids, because that is how we were raised. My job allowed for that, hers did not. So I transitioned from working 50% on the road to working 100% at home. I work full-time and I'm the primary caregiver to our 5 kids. The OMSCS program is the only program that can meet the demands of my schedule. During the day, I'm either working, watching our 3-year-old, meeting with a teacher, or maintaining the house. After school, I'm helping with homework and finalizing supper. After supper, it's kids' activities, eventually prep for bedtime. Working from home has somewhat crimped my career movement, but now that my kids are older, I can start to fix that. The OMSCS program is the only one that can work with my schedule while still providing a meaningful degree upon completion. It is currently 1 a.m. and I'm putting the finishing touches on an assignment. I was going to record this video earlier, but all you would have heard was a busy family life. The flexibility of the OMSCS program has allowed me to pursue my master's degree 20 years after starting my undergrad. Without OMSCS, I likely would not have been able to pursue a traditional master's degree for at least another 10 years. I have met a lot of amazing people through this program and have reinvigorated myself and my career, and it is all thanks to the OMSCS program. Thank you for your time.
To me, it comes down to time and money. You hit a certain point in your career and both are in short supply. You might have family, you might have a job, you can't really take time to even drive to a class and a few times over once or twice a week. But being able to do things online on your own pace, on your own schedule, really enables people that wouldn't otherwise be able to go back to school and to study new things.
Hi, my name is David Moore, and these are my thoughts about the OMSCS program. I guess the 2 main things I find great about it are that first, the quality of the lectures and the videos is extremely high. I've taken 5 OMS classes so far, and the quality of all those classes, the lectures, have been great. The material is super clear, well presented, and very engaging. As an undergrad, The in-person lectures are always hit and miss. Like there's a few professors that stand out that had great lectures, but there were a lot where the lectures were just so-so or worse than that. The second part that I think is great about the program is the other students in the program come from so many different backgrounds, and so many of them have at least 10 years or more of experience working in different industries. So it's always interesting to see the experience they bring to the class and the discussion boards that are based on their own experience of like applying some of the concepts in real life at large scale and in lots of interesting environments. Thanks.
Probably the biggest reason that I joined the OMSCS program was I started reading about it, and everything about it struck me as revolutionary. Here you have a top 10 program in the country with a tuition for around $7,000. And, you know, the word disruptive gets thrown around a lot these days, but something like this is a truly disruptive program in higher education, and I'm just really happy that I can be a part of it.
Hi, my name is Christine. I'm in my third semester at OMSCS. I started in fall 2014, and over that time I've seen 6 different courses prepared and delivered by Georgia Tech and Udacity. In addition to pursuing my CS Masters through that program, I also recently started at Udacity as a product manager. Prior to that, I was at Google doing product operations for about 4 years. So Udacity may seem like a familiar name to you because it's actually the platform partner with Georgia Tech responsible for delivering the OMSCS curriculum to the thousands of enrolled students. And it's really no coincidence that I now work there after a year of taking classes on the platform. So when I started at Georgia Tech, I really had no idea what to expect. But when the entire degree costs less than the cost of a single semester at almost any other university, I figured it wasn't a large financial risk. And I was happy to find that I was immediately pushed to my bounds both technically and academically. There were a few things that really did surprise me though. First was my ability to get to know people in large 400-something people classes that were delivered online. So semester to semester, I would see familiar names and start building relationships as we progress through the degree. And all of this is taking place in forums and peer reviews and group projects. It is definitely not a traditional classroom, but you do feel like you are learning beside your peers and your colleagues. I also got to know my professors really well, which was surprising. I thought it would be kind of impossible given the scope of the online nature of the undertaking. Add to that fact that the course content rivaled that of courses I had taken in undergrad in person at a top 10 university, and all during this time I'm able to chase my career dreams and work full time. So it's amazing and unreal and kind of like changing when you really think about it. So it really makes it's no surprise to me that when I was looking for my next career move, Udacity was at the top of my list because when something's amazing, unreal, and life-changing, it's something that you're really passionate about. So bringing this form of education to millions, if not billions, of people in the world is something that I've seen the benefit of it in my life. I want to have everyone see that same benefit. And yeah, that's me.
The Georgia Tech OMSCS program has been incredibly life-changing. In the program, I've had the chance to go on an incredible journey, meet amazing peers from all over the world, and build a tremendous industry network. I've also had the chance to take rigorous and demanding classes, which have pushed me both professionally and academically. Without a doubt, the Georgia Tech OMSCS program has prepared me for success and enabled me to take a major bite out of life.
Now, if only I could get this back. So I couldn't end this talk without acknowledging all the people who have contributed to making this program what it is. On the Georgia Tech OMSCS team of the different administrators and everybody responsible for putting this together, the instructors who have developed classes for our program, the people at Georgia Tech Professional Education who really help a lot with the developing our courses, of course the Udacity team of course developers and fantastic video editors who really make the course content pop out and really stand on its own, and of course all the students who were gracious enough to let me brag about them in this presentation. So I just want to close on a bit of a personal note. When I started working on this program, I started it with the intention of working on it with my PhD advisor for about a year to make some real money while finishing my dissertation, basically. And I was going to finish my dissertation, graduate, and move on to whatever was next in life. The only reason I'm still working on this is because working on this program, and especially working with these students, has been one of the most fulfilling experiences I've ever had. And if you have the opportunity to work with a program like this or work with this program, I highly recommend it. They're a fantastic group of students to work with, and I learn things and I'm inspired by them every single day. So on that note, any questions?
Is there any thought of opening up the online Piazza group to the in-person students so they can join in this cool community?
So Barbara's asking if there's been any thought about opening up the online Piazza experience to the in-person group. There have been classes that have experimented with elements of that. There's actually interesting FERPA regulations about whether or not they can interact and whether or not they can actually see each other because they're technically on different campuses. It's something I'd really like to be able to do. In fall, we actually did a one-to-one comparison of the online and in-person Piazza group, and that's where we really started to notice the fundamental difference between the two groups, that when it is the classroom, there's a kind of interaction, a kind of interactivity that happens. And yeah, I know that Mark actually has experimented, yeah. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's not quite the same thing, but my course is heavily project-based. And last spring, when I teach the on-campus version, I encourage the students to form teams across the two courses. And I had 3 teams that did that. The logic was very simple, as David's already mentioned. There's students in the OMSCS course with lots of healthcare domain experience. I have a student who's running his own health IT company. In fact, he's sort of helping me run the course now. And those teams really did well. Whereas, of course, the Georgia Tech students largely know how to code, or they know industrial engineering or bioinformatics. Most of my students come from those 3 programs on the course. So I'm a huge believer in that. I think everything David said is absolutely right. These are really different, remarkable students, and I think the on-campus students would gain a lot by interacting with them more.
You mentioned the cost line. What are your thoughts on what happens to the cost when that AT&T, if or when that AT&T subsidy or sponsorship goes away?
Costs won't go up actually. So the AT&T sponsorship was really to get the thing off the ground. It cost a lot of money to develop our courses, and that's kind of to create that initial body of work without going into debt for it. But the program is structured actually, and the number is actually set with the idea of sustainability in mind. It's basically, what does it cost us to run a course online? If you take away the trappings of a campus, you take away the buildings, you take away everything that you need on campus, what do you really need to run this course online? And that's about where that number is set. It's set to be, sustainable for that reason. So.
I've heard that the program is already economically self-sustaining.
Yeah, the program is. Yes, yeah, the program is is already, it is set in a way that it is self-sustaining. It can sustain itself. It doesn't need further infusions to keep it going as is. So, yeah, I mean, if anyone has any money they want to give, I'm sure they would not say no, but.
I mean, I'd be interested to take this offline, but it's an interesting concept, right, to say that it's based on the branding of Georgia Tech, which requires all of those things that you just said, like buildings and football teams and whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it is very interesting. It's the kind of thing that the Georgia Tech name is one of the reasons why it's successful, because if the same exact people, I would bet, even if just all the same instructors had gotten together and say, we're going to do this independently, not with Georgia Tech's blessing, and get AT&T to give us the money directly and do it ourselves, it wouldn't carry the same clout. It definitely does borrow from Georgia Tech's brand name, but I think it also, in my opinion at least, is also expanding it. It's showing Georgia Tech's innovation in this area. It's showing that we can take something that's been done oftentimes largely the same way for 100 years and really change it. So.
Of course, the interesting thing to speculate about is what will that look like in 10 or 20 years?
What are your thoughts about the fragmentation of online communities? Like there's one on Google+, Facebook, Twitter, Slack.
Yeah, it's actually something we're encountering very closely right now because we have about, we have a hip chat community and a Slack community, and there's questions as to whether or not both can be supported while, whether or not they can both survive or if it'd be better to coalesce around one. I think that what we'll see is a good bit more coalescence as time goes on, that students will centralize around whatever is popular and whatever they're getting value. Because it's student run, it's not something that we can kind of dictate. So I think it is something that occurs and is leading to some things that some students not seeing initially the kind of interaction they would see if it was more formal. But I think we're seeing it coalescing a good bit. We're seeing students coalesce around HipChat. The Google Plus group has really taken off on its own with its splinter groups that are all kind of connected back to that original group. They're not competitors. They're things that are kind of, you want to discuss specifically research options in the OMS. You come to this kind of set aside group. So I think it plays a part, but I think it's naturally kind of starting to work. Any other questions?
Early slides had seats versus enroll. What was seats?
Seats is basically if you take 2 classes, you're 2 seats, but you're still 1 student. So we see, I won't go back to it, but we have 3,000 students in the program this semester, 4,000 seats, which means the average student takes 1.33 classes basically. So most of our students take 1 class at a time. That's actually been one of the major pieces of feedback we get from students, that many students come into the program and they're expecting kind of what they've seen on Coursera or other interfaces. They're expecting it's an online class. It's not that bad. And they get in and they discover, oh, it's not an online class in the same way I'm used to online classes. It's an in-person class delivered online. And I can't do 2 of these at a time while having a job and a family. And we actually see a much higher, or a significantly higher drop rate that first semester because students are suddenly realizing, I've bitten off way more than I can chew in this program. And so then they settle in and more often I think go with 1 class per semester and kind of cruise at that metaphorical altitude.
What do you think about expanding the program for students like regular students, like those who have disabilities or cannot arrive to campus?
Yeah, there have actually been a lot of questions about students who, for other reasons, are traditionally on-campus students, but there's something about this that would give them an option that they wouldn't have. It could be class offerings, that our classes are offered almost every semester. At least, so far, every class in the program has been every spring and fall, whereas their corresponding classes have only been fall or spring sometimes. Or students who are co-oping. If a class is offered online, but it's cross-listed as a on-campus class, and they're co-oping so they can't come to class in person, could they take a class online? I think we're starting to have those conversations because we're starting to actually see the demand for it. In the past, we haven't seen it. But this semester, for the first time, we have, I think, 20 students from GT Lorraine who are taking OMS classes because it's a class that's not offered at GT Lorraine. But they want that credit, they want to take that class, and it's an online program. But there's nothing stopping them from our point of view. So we're starting to see that, I think. If there's nothing else? Cool. Well, thank you all very much.